In addition to being yet another president from Virginia, from being handsome and well-formed, President Monroe has two particularly important legacies. The first is what is known as the Monroe Doctrine. We give President Monroe credit for this, but it really was written by John Quincy Adams, his Secretary of State. What the Monroe Doctrine says is essentially the Western Hemisphere, North America, it's ours. It belongs to the United States. And any European or foreign involvement in the Western Hemisphere, in North America, or even in South America, it will be seen as aggression by these other countries, and we would be called to go to war. So that's pretty significant. It is saying that we feel that we have a claim as the protector, or the owner, rather, of this entire hemisphere. Another thing that happens during President Monroe's administration is related to the issue of log rolling. Now, log rolling in a competition like this is about balance. And so log rolling politically is about giving up something you want in order to get something you need. So it's a little bit of political, I scratch your back, you scratch mine. And this happens with the Missouri Compromise. So Missouri was a territory, and it wants to join the Union, and it wants to be a slave state. So here is Missouri. The problem is, if Missouri joins as a slave state, it would put the balance of slave states versus free states, put it out of whack. And so our friend Henry Clay suggests a compromise, including a territory we'll call Maine. And for this, Henry Clay earns the nickname the Great Compromiser. He wants to help ensure the balance of slave states and free states, and that's to help create balance and help create progress in the U.S. Congress. Otherwise, things would always end up in deadlock. So what will happen with the Missouri Compromise? Missouri will be admitted as a slave state if Maine can be admitted as a free state. Additionally, if you see that yellow line, that is the boundary, it is the latitudinal line, 3630. And the decision is made that there will be no more slave states north of that line. Missouri will be the very last one. So it's establishing, essentially sort of saying, we don't have all of this territory yet, but if there are any further states that will be north of this line, they cannot be slave territories. And this plays into the story of Denmark Vesey. He was a slave who came from the Caribbean in the 1700s, but he buys his freedom in 1799. He was a very skilled carpenter, so he was able to save up a little bit of money from doing odd jobs. He was really involved in his church, and it was known as the AME Church. This is a denomination, the African Methodist Episcopal Church. And he was involved in his hometown of Charleston, South Carolina. So from not only his time as a slave, but also through being involved in church, he got to know a lot of people in the community. And he was inspired by what happened with the Missouri Compromise. He saw that this country that he belongs to or is a part of, that yes, it is sort of eliminating slavery, but it is sort of encouraging it. It's not taking a hard line. And he really is getting upset about the institution of slavery. Because of his involvement in church, and he would, lead Bible studies and give sermons, he's able to gain some followers through simple persuasion, through the power of his message. And he had planned a revolt for July 14th, 1822. This was the French holiday of Bastille Day, if you remember, from 1789, July 14th. And the reason that Denmark Vesey chooses July 14th is a nod to the French. Now, when the French lost control of Haiti back in 1802, 1803, then France outlawed slavery. So he is inspired by this country that has outlawed slavery. He's chosen the date for his raid or his revolt for that date. Now he is trying to gain as many co-conspirators or many followers as possible. But like a bad game of telephone or a secret that is spread to many, many people, someone is going to spill the beans. And we don't know who, but someone told some of the city officials in Charleston. And even though there were possibly hundreds upon hundreds of people involved throughout the southern colonies, Vesey and 5 others are arrested, accused of being the ringleaders for this entire plot. And the plan was, we found out, that they were going to take weapons, find armories, and kill every white person that they saw. So this was pretty extreme. They were captured in June, so before the plan was going to take place. They are hanged. It is Vesey and 5 other men, and the result is there is an additional crackdown, additional laws and rules placed on blacks, both free blacks and slaves, throughout the South, including sort of discrimination against allowing blacks, free or slave, to be involved in churches, to have community organizations. That brings us to the election of 1824. Things were so good following the War of 1812. Everyone is so happy. There's no Federalist candidate because we've gotten rid of the Federalist Party essentially. But because everyone is so happy, the Republican Democrats can't decide who they want. They are so happy that they are split in their opinions. So there ends up being, 4 different candidates. We have John Quincy Adams, Andrew Jackson, Henry Crawford, and Henry Clay. Now the problem is, when the election takes place, if you look at the map, it is all over the place. Jackson won the most electoral votes in the Electoral College, but he did not win a majority. And so this is the problem. You have to win a 51% majority in the Electoral College. So when the Electoral College vote is not clear, then it goes to the House of Representatives. These are the representatives from each state based on population, and it also means that they are sort of available or open to persuasion, not bribery. But Henry Clay is going to take this opportunity because he really doesn't want Jackson to be president. So Henry Clay starts bargaining with people in New England and Ohio for people to push their support to John Quincy Adams. And Henry Clay is working with John Quincy Adams and saying, if I help win you the presidency, I want something in return. Jackson is really upset by this. He calls it a corrupt bargain, but it does work. So John Quincy Adams becomes the president. Henry Clay becomes the Secretary of State, and Jackson loses, and he kind of is upset with good cause at this. And we'll see he'll run for re-election in just a few years. During John Quincy Adams' presidency, now he is the son of John Adams, but on his own, John Quincy Adams was a well-respected statesman. He had been Secretary of State, and he is going to continue the American system. So you can see that partnership with Henry Clay. He wants to maintain high tariffs. He wants to maintain and build more infrastructure. He wants more of the national bank. He wants to continue building internal improvements or infrastructure. He wanted more protective tariffs to support American manufacturing, and he wanted to support and encourage the national bank and a united currency. He ultimately extends the Cumberland Road. He creates new canals. So he is really working to grow and build this country. Now, with John Quincy Adams, we have the issue of influence peddling. Martin Van Buren was a politician in New York State, and he was trying to gain support, especially for the Erie Canal. And in upstate New York, many of the settlers there are from old Dutch families. And there's a region in upstate New York called Kinderhook. Well, Martin Van Buren had the nickname Old Kinderhook. And he would and this isn't that he's bribing, but he is trading favors in order for certain things to happen politically. And he would sign his initials, not MB, but his nickname of Old Kinderhook. So if he signed his initials OK, that meant your project, your road, your canal got the green light. And this is where we get the term OK, meaning everything is all right. In 1828, President Adams passes the Tariff of 1828. Its purpose was to protect northern industry. And of course, they're going to agree with this, because if the foreign produced items are going to be more expensive because these foreign countries will pay tariffs, that means that Americans will ultimately buy products produced by northern factories. However, this tariff does not help the Southerners, and as you can see, they wanted foreign goods because they wanted people to trade with European countries, because the Southerners wanted to trade their cotton. With this, if there is a tariff, it means the goods are more expensive, those foreign countries won't want to trade, and those foreign countries won't buy Southern cotton. So the Southerners called this the Tariff of Abominations. This angers people enough, that plus the influence peddling of Martin Van Buren, that in the election of 1828, John Quincy Adams is incredibly unpopular. So he only serves one term, and as you can see there, Andrew Jackson is vindicated, and he becomes president in 1828.